With a karakia before, so I'll just declare this meeting open and welcome everyone, community board members, Andrew, Matt from Alliance, and Dave from the press. Welcome, Dave. Just to let everyone know today that we're recording this meeting publicly, so just anything that you're going to say, you'll know it'll be taken down and used against you. So we do have I do have an apology by text from Councillor Steve. He's got a bit of a medical emergency, so if we could have some move in a second to accept that. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and Councillor Ali Frank. Forward them as well. Thanks very much for that. Steve may get onto Teams with a little bit of luck later on, or if not soon. Anybody public forum today? Community board members, you don't want to say? That's great. That's all good. So we will just move on to item 4. So we have got a late. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's right, isn't it? Yes, item 4. We have had a very late item brought to our attention that would like to be considered today, and it relates to the decision we made earlier on about McGibbon Swing Bridge, and we've had the landowners, the neighbouring landowners, have written to us and contacted Mayor Tracy and Brian. So I would like this considered a little bit later as item 9, but for that purpose we do need a resolution to have this brought forward. So just that's briefly the reason we want to consider it. So if someone wouldn't mind a motion that the item being that the request to be made to reconsider the decision to demolish McGibbon Swing Bridge to be taken as a late item of business. So if the council is happy with that.
I'll second that.
Peter and Sharon, all in favour? So the decision is to consider this, and Brian will bring this up a little bit later on. Okay, thanks, councillors, for that. So just any declarations of conflicts of interest around the table? No, that's good. I will move on to the confirmation of minutes. There's someone, which I haven't got, just excuse me a moment. A second around a mover that the minutes be considered. Councillor Mike, Councillor Peter, all in favour? You will go through the minutes from the 21st of June, page by page. Page 6, you will see that McGibbon Swing Bridge items there. Page 7. Page 8. Just for no items for consideration. We'll move on to the next item of business, which is item 7. Mayor Tracy will give you a bit of a verbal update on the Mayor's task force for recovery. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. The Mayor's Task Force for Recovery held its first meeting on the 30th of June here in the chamber, both with a mix of people in the room and some on Teams, mainly from agencies from around the country. So those represented were the Tauranga District Council. We had our iwi partners, Rangatani and Ngāti Kahungunu, Horizons Regional Council, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, the Tauranga Alliance. We had our recovery manager, Don Cameron. We had representation there from a NIWA climate scientist, the Department of Internal Affairs, Minister McAnulty's office, the Minister of Social Development, Waka Kotahi and Te Whara Ora. Don presented his report, which many of us will have seen around this table, covering the initial impacts to roading and other significant impacts that were experienced across the Tauranga district during the cyclone. We discussed the ongoing weather effects that were delaying recovery. Don went into depth into the impact survey and shared that, and also shared the picture of our landscape pre and post the cyclone, which really highlighted the level of damage that we experienced over the district. He highlighted that 57.71% of the impacted people are farmers, growers, lifestyle block owners. 24% of those are residents of the Tarawa district, another 8% business owners that weren't farming, and then a large majority of farming residents. 257 bridges and culverts reported damaged, and 1,445 hectares of forestry damage across 22 farms. The businesses reported loss of production, cash flow problems, mental health, stress, and burnout being very evident. There is a dual risk to the community that with the Denver compounded supply needing to be emptied this summer, if these communities need water for their tanks, it will need to come from another town. NIWA has reported a strong indication that La Nina will likely dissipate over the next few months, and El Nino is likely to replace it. So critical to have that scientist there getting that good, accurate information for the Tarawa district so that we can keep people informed. And I guess a real concern, we don't want disinformation out there as well. So I was really pleased that NIWA had come to the table. We did discuss, it was very difficult to contact the Ministry for the Environment, but they will be present at the next meeting. And so Andrew Tate is the scientist from NIWA who's offered to help with our comms regarding this, and great to have his trusted source of information to minimise stress to our communities. The red stickered properties, Wellington Council has come in to classify these, and that's underway at the moment. The Department of Internal Affairs is working with Treasury on the National Resilience Plan, and the Department of Internal Affairs is working on a .loves data funding application so that we've got that information around exactly what's happening in our community at our fingertips, and I think that'll be very useful to Council as well. So hopefully their application's successful. MSD reported they've not seen any increase in our stats. Waka Kotahi congratulated the Tarawa Alliance and the council for the job that they were doing in roading. So that was really pleasing to hear. Very interested in the priority matrix. And then post that meeting, they've also been in contact just for a one-on-one to come and meet with all of us and what they can do further to help. So that was great. A claim for $34 million in roading emergency had been lodged at that stage, and we're working with Horizons in terms of the Regional Land Transport Plan to ensure that we get resilience funding for the next financial period, 24 to 27. A new business support package was announced by Kanoa, and the New Zealand Export Credit Office are working through the details of that. DIA with the Cyclone Recovery Unit, we're using a proposed approach for assessing the recovery plan of impacts for councils, and they're just working out how the funds they've got will be administered over the next year. Horizons Regional Council reported $9 million worth of damages in the Horizons region throughout this event. Both we have supported council's infrastructure team to assist with those sites, and that's been invaluable. And the iwi have health and wellbeing counsellors available if they're needed. Our iwi, Scampower and the Alliance have all shown the appreciation for council's response with the recovery, which was lovely to hear. And the phrase that was used from Te Whata Ora was around rain anxiety, and the Red Cross do have some psychology training around that. And I think just with the weather events that we've had since, I did reflect to the team that I probably know what that feels a little bit like when you're sitting in the office and worried about the rain coming down and what that's doing outside the district. So it was a good meeting. The next one is planned for early August, and that date just needs a little bit of a tweak, so I'll get that out. The plan is that councillors can Zoom in or come in and sit in attendance for that. Okay.
Thanks for that, Mayor Tracy. Do councillors have any questions about that meeting at all? Sorry, Mike.
Through you, Chair. Horizons mentioned $9 million worth of damage to their infrastructure. What proportion of that was Tararua, please?
I couldn't tell you exactly on that because they had significant damage in the Pohongina Valley, Manawatu district, and some in Rangitikei as well. But I can request that figure for you.
That's that. Councillor Moore. Thank you, Ed Tracy, for that very full report. That's really important group work, I'm sure. So if we move on to reports, councillors, and 8.1, which is Roger. All in your hands, Roger. Councillors, I'm sure you've read Roger's full report in respect of the impounded supply. So Roger, we'll just leave you to go through it and then we'll get councillors to chat after that. Does that suit you?
Side.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Madam Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the public that have joined us. If I can just start off that what I'm presenting is a team effort from across the TD staff, or right across staff, and others might jump in and just help me as we go through this presentation, given that there's a number of different considerations as we bring this together. I'm working on the basis that everyone has read the report, but what I'd like to do is just highlight a number of key issues just to provide some context. So the last report was presented on the 31st of May, and at that point we were anticipating that we had 18 months to prepare for the repairs to the impounded supply. And we also advised of the temporary repairs that were to be conducted in June. Now those temporary repairs, as you know, were completed and were successful, and we're now sitting at around about 4 litres a second from the original 25, which is really encouraging. Also, since that time, we've had a ROV inspection, so another remotely operated vehicle has been in the dam, and there's a report as to the outcomes of that. I just need to make one correction. The report states that there were no changes to the depressions or what the divers had previously found in the dam. There has been one slight change to one of the depressions by about 250 millimetres. So the markings that the divers placed, as you would have seen on the original liner that we brought in, the markings that were placed during the repairs have dropped by about 250 millimetres. But they weren't sure about that when they did the original when they gave me a verbal brief, and it's only been the report that's been recently received that highlights that slight drop. But I've spoken to Tonkin and Taylor and they don't have any particular concerns about that. It's to be expected given that there's still a lot of water moving through those subsoil drains, especially with all the rain that we've had recently. The key outcome of the repairs was to identify that the liner was in worse condition than anticipated and that permanent repairs needed to be completed as soon as possible. And that's to avoid an uncontrolled release and to ensure that the disruption of water supply to Dennyburg isn't interrupted. So steps have now been taken to prepare for those full repairs, and a tentative date has been identified for them to commence, being the 1st of November 2023. Monitoring and management of the dam continues, and I understand some details around that was presented yesterday at the Risk and Insurance Committee meeting. So I can go into any further detail if required. So what I'd like to do is just summarise our next steps. So the recommended option in terms of progressing is full repair to the impounded supply itself. Obviously, because we're now under time pressure, the other options that were originally presented in the last report have been ruled out. We don't have time to proceed with those options because they're much more comprehensive and would take a lot more time. Two key issues to be aware of. One is the floating cover. So the floating cover will have to be removed for the repairs, and a decision has yet been made as to whether it should be replaced or not. There's two quite different trains of thought around this, and so that decision is still pending. The other thing is a geotechnical investigation to assess the stability of the eastern embankment, and that actually involves drilling into that eastern embankment, which is quite a specialised skill set, and we're just finalising the details and a suitable contractor to do that work. So that the samples will then, or one of the samples will then have to be sent to Australia for analysis to provide the level of detail that's required to provide or to ensure that we get the right decision in terms of any remediation or not that's required to that eastern embankment. The next step after this particular present or report is a workshop. And at that workshop, we want to go into, or the intent is to go into more detail around pre-treatment. So what are our options? And we've had a company come up and do an analysis about what the options are. But we see that the pre-treatment is critical to allowing us to empty the impound supply to ensure that security of water to the Dannevirke community. Additional storage will be presented and some options around that and some costs, and also demand management, in particular an alternate water source for the Alliance Group for the meatworks, and that's already underway, and some inquiries are progressing, and also the metering of those unmetered users between the gallery and Reservoir 2. So exactly what that's involved, or what is involved in each of those areas and the associated costs, will be discussed and presented as part of that workshop prior to a final report being presented to council. A summary of the financial considerations and a handout has been provided just to indicate where we're at. An additional handout was placed on your desks that wasn't included as part of the report to give an indication of where we are in terms of expenses to date against the amount approved last September. Two key notes, one particular point I'd like to raise is the $300K or $1,000 for the temporary repairs, which is asked for in this report. So essentially it's just signing off that money that was expensed as part of those temporary repairs conducted under urgency. There's also been a risk register was included as part of this report, and I'd like to highlight a couple of issues just to help manage expectations. So if you're able to turn to that risk register, which is at page 27 of the report, and I'd just like to highlight those particular ratings that have been identified as severe. So the first one is the financial capacity and highlighting the threat to council in terms of retaining sufficient borrowing capacity in the case of an emergency or having to respond to a contingency. So that'll be a key consideration that will need to be factored into the funding of this project. Secondly, not being ready in time for this construction season. And that's a very real possibility. As you can appreciate, what we're trying to do is not easy to put this all together in essentially 4 months and then to empty the impound supply and commence the repairs. And we will do our best to achieve that, but there are a number of factors that could delay or potentially preclude that from happening. So I just want to highlight that fact at this point. The reference number 17 is the landowner considerations, and we're going to talk about in more detail about that later, but in particular, that's going to be essential to us moving forward and being able to complete those remediation, the remediation of the impound supply. And finally, reference number 23 is the weather risks. And if we have another very wet summer, then we're going to have real challenges in completing those repairs. I'm hoping that's not going to be the case, but we just don't know. So that's another key factor just to be aware of, that again could inhibit our progress in terms of moving forward. So that concludes my summary, and very happy to take any questions you might have.
Thanks very much for that, Roger. I'm sure everyone has read this report and everything else around it very diligently. So I'll just go around the council table.
So Thanks. I just wanted to, I guess, seeing as you finished talking about the risk register, maybe just sort of start there, if that's okay. I guess looking at this, and you've highlighted a number of the severe risk ratings, and I note even when we have a look at treatment and mitigation, a lot of those are also still sitting as a residual risk rating of high or one severe. When you're talking about 4 months to be able to undertake it and the amount of risk, because there seems to be still a very, very, very high level of risk involved in this. How likely is it, do you think, that we're actually going to be able to get it completed within your recommended time period? Because I guess the reason why I ask is, would it be more prudent if it seems very, very risky to do that, to push it out a little bit more to see if we're going to have the time? I understand in your report why we need to do it so urgently. I guess what I'm questioning looking at this register is, are we going to be able to?
Really good question, and I don't know, to be honest, but I think we need to aim to achieve that. The indication we've had from Tonkin and Taylor is they can complete the detailed design in that period that they have. Thankfully, the optioneering workshop helped them to develop a concept design. So a lot of that work's already been done, and they're well positioned to progress with detailed design. The key issue for me is the ability to get some form of water treatment, additional water treatment in place. But I've selected that date of the 1st of November really to keep people focused and to, I suppose, just put a stake in the ground. And we may need to delay that, so I might come back next month and I might say, hey, we've had to delay that by a month or whatever the case may be. But we'll, until someone tells me it's not achievable, then that's what we're going to aim for. Really, because we don't want to limit the construction period that you have, through that summer period. We don't want to be pushing that too far into autumn if we can avoid it. So the initial period that Tonkin and Taylor have given us is 5 months to complete the remediation itself. But there's still a whole lot of variables. So that's sort of probably quite that there's still a lot of factors that need to be considered, which will come up during detailed design.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Kieran. And just to add to that, I mean, it's been one of the key discussion points that we've had about this is about drawing a line in the sand and start putting some targets in place. But we're realistic about those timeframes as well, and there's got to be some flexibility around that. Just to add to what Roger was saying, though, a lot of work is still continuing behind the scenes as well, around sort of contractor engagement. We've got staff members already working with the Alliance. We are looking at the various options as we speak. So there's a lot happening that we've just got to get on with as well. But there's certainly a high risk of not achieving those timeframes.
That's Peter.
Roger, the pump that you'll need to drain the dam, is that in place or has it been ordered?
The pump's now in place. It was positioned as part of the temporary repairs in anticipation of potentially having to empty the dam at that point. It's some additional work's been completed, and so it's sitting on top of the cover right now, ready to go.
Thank you. Second question, how many users are on the line between the intake and the dam?
We don't, as far as I'm aware, and I'm still have to investigate this further. We don't know exactly how many connections there are. I'm aware of 7 that have been identified, but I think there's some more work that needs to be done in terms of confirming that.
Pre-treatment, what's involved with that? Is that like a sand filter arrangement, or what's required for a pre-treatment?
We've been given a number of options. Sand filter is definitely one of them. One of the not as expensive options, as is some additional tanks to allow the turbidity to settle. So potentially some smaller tanks that enable us to do that. The other options are all around membranes, so ceramic membranes or other types of membranes, and those particular options are much more expensive and won't be completed in time. So we'd be looking at early in the new year before we'd have anything in place. And quite a lot of additional infrastructure would be required, given that this treatment is not required permanently. Once the impound is back, has been repaired and is functioning again, we wouldn't need that additional water treatment. So it's just trying to manage this cost, but ensuring we have some risk mitigation in place.
Yeah, Chair Kerry, the great report, Roger, really stipulating everything out in the open, which is really good and transparent. I just wanted, just following on from what Peter was talking about, so Paeatua has the membrane plant, is that what they use, not sand filters?
Yeah, that's correct. Paeatua, the new plant at Paeatua is a membrane plant. I'm going to look at Terry here, but I'm sure that's right. Yeah, I'm getting the nod. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, that's that's quite an expensive plant, that would add to the costs that are already incurring. Also, we are using Tonkin and Taylor and the experts. Are we like looking at local contractors to help with excavation and repairs?
Yes, we've approached a couple of local contractors, and we're going to go out with registration of interest. However, I've just been advised that ideally we would have a contractor that has worked on a medium classified dam previously. So I suspect that that's going to really reduce the number of potential contractors and potentially rule out some of our local providers. So we've got a bit of work to go under the water to go under the bridge on that, but that's the advice from Tonkin and Taylor, given the specifications that will be required to be followed as part of the remediation works. So yeah.
Just following on from that, are there many is there many to pick from? Because I'm thinking there might be quite a few people having to travel, be quite a lot more costly.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I asked Tonkin and Taylor. So they're going to send down a list, and we're just going to have to work through that. So that's the advice we've received. But their experience in the past is when a contractor has been employed that doesn't have that experience, often it extends, or the cost ends up increasing, and the timeframes increase because they're dealing with something that they're just not prepared or have the knowledge to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Kerry. Roger, thank you very much for this. It's actually quite pleasing to see the words completed and a lot of this. So, you know, heads up to you and the team for doing that. You recommended in 4.2 that the remediation of the Eastern Embankment will be presented. That's obviously quite a critical part of the jigsaw puzzle. When do you think that second geological investigation is it imminent, or is that likely to, given some of the risks you highlighted later on around that Eastern Embankment, obviously understanding what's going on in there is quite critical to success of the program, isn't it? So do we have a timeline on that?
Not at this stage. They're just finalising details with a contractor to do the drilling. So I don't have dates as to when they might be available. But the indication I've had from Tonkin and Taylor is that they can have that completed as part of the detailed design, so within the detailed design. And also the sense at this point is that there won't need to be a full rebuild of that embankment. That's the advice we've received at this point. I'm not going to get too enthusiastic just yet. But if that's the case, it means that that work could be done independently of the repairs in the dam. And I'm reasonably confident that that will be the case. The slope on that eastern embankment is actually greater than the original design. So it's 4-to-1 rather than 3-to-1. So there's more soil on that embankment. So at this stage, we're feeling reasonably confident in terms of what might need to be done there.
Thanks, Roger. If I could just mention a couple of things, thanks. Just on your recommendations, just a couple of things. So the $300,000 request is to basically pay for repair emergency works to now, really, isn't it? That's for the temporary repairs and
Yeah, so that's what we're anticipating the final cost will be for the temporary repairs. Now, some of that cost has already been paid for from the initial amount. So just to highlight that, but we've still got a couple of quite large bills to come in. Yeah.
And the 600,000 figure to proceed is, which you've asked for approval, is for the next step of work for the full design of the dam and the eastern embankment and anything else required around the repairs of the dam.
Yeah, that's correct. It'll include the cost of the geotechnical investigation, and the indication is that could be as much as $150,000 just for that investigation itself. But it includes, or there's quite an extensive list of what will be included as part of that design, I suppose, but in particular, the reinstatement of all the depressions that have been identified, the complete remediation of the under drainage system. So they need to design the complete replacement of that, replacement of the liner, the inlet structure. There'll need to be some works to strengthen that inlet structure to make sure that the damage that did occur cannot or doesn't occur again. Also, water offtake arrangements from the reservoir so that we can empty it completely. So that's a key limitation. And some additional pipe work. And then there's the monitoring requirements as well that need to be installed. So I could go on, but you can see there's quite an extensive list of considerations that need to be built into that design work. Yeah.
Just a quick follow on from that, then just to Roger, perhaps to Raj and Brian. So just the extra funding, we approved the 1.85 million. So any extra funding that we're required now to approve, is that likely to be capitalised? Just a question, capitalised against the dam going forward?
It's my understanding. I'll look to Raj or Brian, but yeah, that's my understanding. That'll be part of the whole project. Yeah.
Raj is nodding, so that's okay. Good. Thank you, Raj. Councillor Peter.
Roger, in the redo of the dam, is it intended to utilise more of the water that the dam contains? My understanding is that currently or previously, we could only take about half or a quarter of the water in the dam. The rest we couldn't get out. Is it intended to keep that pump that you were talking about earlier, keep that there to enable us to extract most of the water from the dam if we need to?
You mean short term or long term? No. So my understanding is they're going to design another way for us to completely empty or to utilise all the water in the impounded supply. So at the moment, at about 6 metres, the pumps start cavitating. With the pump on the cover now, we can go right down to confident to at least 2 metres in order to empty it. But yeah, no, that's part of the design works is another mechanism to in order that we can fully utilise all the water in the impounded supply. Yeah.
Councillor Scott.
Thanks. Roger, just wanted to jump back to the risk report just quickly. I guess looking at one of the opportunities that jumped out at me, which was ID number 27. looking at says, for example, potential for insurance cover. Just wanted to ask, from what you've seen so far, discussions with Tonkin and Taylor, how likely is that possibility of being able to claim any insurance cover?
I'm not speaking with any particular insurance expertise here, but from what I've observed of the impounded supply, there's been a leak which has undermined the subsoil drains. That's then caused depressions, which has caused the liner to be extended over a cavity, essentially, which it was never designed to do. So from that perspective, I don't see there's likely to be the possibility of an insurance claim. In terms of the inlet structure, I think as the Mayor mentioned at the public meeting we had recently, is that the design of the dam was done by the council itself. So unfortunately, well, we would be looking at ourselves in terms of the responsibility for that. I suppose we just don't know what we're going to find. So yeah.
No, sorry, Roger.
Meeting a bit of a hurry amongst councils and yourselves. Is that workshop is scheduled pretty soon? Would you like to do that?
We hope to have it next month. I was talking to Brian about this as to exactly when we would when that would occur. It's really dependent on getting those final costings in, so that when we come, I suppose we can really the council can be fully informed of exactly what needs to be done and what it's likely to cost before we prepare that final report for approval.
If I just sort of one more comment. So there are in that council, there are some other considerations. Obviously, the costs are pretty important here, but then we haven't touched on it this report, but we do need to consider alternative storage, either prior to before the dam or similar to our treated water supply. There are issues that we need to discuss around demand management and what we do with that. So some of these items are probably pretty critical to be discussed along with the full cost of the dam, Roger, aren't they? Do you see that?
Yeah, and then there's also the legal considerations and consenting. So there's a few other sort of factors that also need to be included.
No, thanks very much for that. Yeah. Right, so we'll go Michael and Sharon.
To you, Chair. Just to go back to the Eastern Embankment, can you give us, there's going to be a core sample taken sent to Australia, and on that analysis, there is going to be decisions made. Can you give us a worst case scenario and a best case scenario, and also the timeline? The worst case will be taking months, and the best case could take days or weeks to repair.
Yeah, good question. So I suppose the worst case is that we have to fully rebuild that Eastern Embankment. Now that's not the whole embankment. It'll only be the area that was completely excavated above the pipes, the subsoil drain pipes that come out at the northern end. Yeah, so it's not that whole Eastern Embankment. Now that will significantly increase the time of the repair works, and also cost. The cost will go up markedly. But that would be incorporated into the detailed design. So as soon as they have that information, they'll be able to provide us with a recommendation, and then as they need to include that into the detailed design, or if it's lesser than that, if it's just building up a berm at the base of the embankment, then that could be done separately. So we'll make a decision, I think, once we have that information. The best case is that we don't need to do anything. That the assessment is that the soil, especially within that particular area, is adequate for a medium potential impact classification dam of this size, and no requirements. So, and that obviously would definitely be the best outcome. That's what I'm hoping for. So, yeah.
Councillor Sharon?
Kerry, I just want to just make sure that the decision making around what originally at the end of May were 4 options, we've got to option 1 now. You mentioned, Roger, the reason for that is the timing and the urgency of the damage that has been found. I just want to check in, and I'm looking at Jess in the background there, against our significant consultation and engagement policy. Has the process to reach that decision followed through on that?
I'm looking at Jess in terms of an answer.
Jess and then Brian?
If I can just comment, obviously the key driver right now is the safety of the dam. And so I think that's a key concern.
Not challenging a decision. I just want reassurance that going from 4 options to 1 in a very short period of time, we've still managed to follow the steps that we should have followed during that process, decision making. I listened to you this morning, Jess.
I don't know if that's on. Is that on? Right, still yours.
You're on.
We aren't in a position, I don't think, to consult yet, given we don't have the detailed design. I think there are elements that we'll find in that detailed design where there is ability to consult with the public. So I think that's the position that we're in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So the additional storage is a consideration that we could consult with the public. So we could say, here's some additional costs, but this is what it would provide in terms of long-term security and future-proofing the water supply. So that's one key aspect of the overall works that we could definitely take through that consultation process. But I think in terms of the actual repair and what's required in terms of delivering that repair, there's really not a lot of opportunity for consultation.
It is still a significant provision, which, understanding our discussion this morning, has met the criteria of making a significant decision that the council has the ability to make.
I'd just like Brian to.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. So we did consider in terms of this current decision was around that, did it require us to engage significant engagement policy, not for today's decision, but potentially due to the sheer value or cost associated, it's likely to trigger the significant engagement policy. It then becomes about what consultation we'll end up doing around that, which would, effectively could be a tick box exercise, but there will be some options available. Then there potentially will be limited options available, but under the LGA, we'll still require to do a level of consultation.
Yeah.
Raj, have I got that right? Do you want to? Yeah.
I guess, Brian, given what we're trying to do, it might have to be reasonably quick consultation, mightn't, if we want to commence those works. So yes, yeah.
And I think it's important to highlight, what has been done to date in terms of keeping. We're doing our very best to keep the community informed, and I think the public meeting that was held in late June has been the latest step to do that, and we will continue to do that right through the process.
Yeah.
One of the things we discussed this morning were in that information, correct me if I'm wrong, Jess, is that in cases of emergency, we don't need to consult. You could determine that this is an emergency.
Absolutely, but given the impact that this has on the community, we are definitely looking at engaging with the community once we have that the detailed design. We know more. We know what the works are going to involve, what the cost is going to be. We're definitely engaged with the community. Just how we do that is in terms of the limited time that we use, etc., and our methods. that's, I guess, a decision we have to make through our policy.
I understand that, but in terms of timing, we could call the emergency button, push the emergency button and have a very short consultation period.
Yeah. But just further to that, yeah, it's a tricky one. So we're talking about those exemptions to the significant engagement policy around that under emergencies. Generally, that would be as an emergency has happened, a cyclone, in our minds, this is an emergency, but under the Act, whether or not this covers as emergency, we might not quite reach that threshold. Maybe.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. I think when I look at the risk register and number 30 talks about opportunity and relationships, we have committed to keep our community informed, not just of decisions, but the whole way across this process, because it will involve water restrictions. It's important that people understand. And I guess recording this meeting today is a part of that. So we are focused on that the entire way through.
Yes, Tracy. Thanks very much, Roger.
Thanks, Roger, for this very full report and the robust discussion. We do have a bit more to chat about later and with some aspects of this, but council's happy for the time being? Right. Great. Thanks very much, Roger. Thanks, Roger, for that. Appreciate it. Stay right where you are, Roger. So before we move on, councillors, we've got a motion under 8.1. So if someone like to move a seconder, Councillor Peter and Councillor Erin, all in favour? Thanks, councillors. So if we move on to 8.2, which Roger's got a handle on, infrastructure manager report, plus Matt and sorted out 2 councils on this. I'm just. So I'm not just councillors and the team. I'm not sure if everyone knows everybody, but I'd just like to introduce Mark Ellingham, our new transport manager, on the far corner of the table, together with Matt and Joe, we know, sitting beside Roger, and Andrew from Alliance beside Peter. So I'm sure, but Mark's probably not known to everybody here. So he's our new transport guru. So welcome. That's all on your shoulders, Mark, I know. So thanks. So, Brian's an author of the report, so we'll let him get underway with it.
So thank you, Chair Kerry. I'll introduce the report, but we've got the team around that will speak to their subjects, just in regards to the recruitment through the group manager infrastructure. So that's process is well under the way now. So we interviewed last week and we continued to interview this week. So we're hoping to make an announcement on appointment regarding that role over the next couple of weeks, but we've got some very good applications for that. So that's very pleasing. In the meantime, I've sort of, I guess, semi-filled in the acting group manager role, but we've got some very capable other managers that are also all stepping up. And as you know, or some of you may not, Roger has now stepped in and been appointed as our Three Waters engineer, and saying congratulations. He might be thinking something else, but in the meantime, he's also overlooking the impounded or leading the impounded repair, as he's just presented that report as well. It is critical us to provide some support to Roger. So we are talking to people regarding that and hopefully have some support around him very soon. I think the other part of this report, and Joe will speak to this in a bit more detail later on, is there will be some change of hours within the Ikitahuna Refuse Station. That is not a change in level of service. It's just purely a change in the opening and closing hours, so we can get more efficiencies around that in relation to how we then link into the other refuse stations. I'll leave her to give the reasons for that, but ultimately I'll now hand over to the team. Chair Kerry.
Transport, I think. Then transport, right. Transport, all yours, mate.
Through you, Chair Kerry. Within transport at the moment, the BOU side of things is actually working reasonably well. The main issue that we are having is obviously with the amount of emergency works and slips that we have out there, being able to keep up with our normal cyclic maintenance in regards to carrying that out, as well as the added vigilance on our other sites. The currently impacted sites that we're monitoring are undergoing frequent issues. And when we get to our following report in regards to the recovery update, we'll cover off on some of that. In regards to the rest of the works, our grading programs that are getting back on track, the potholing and the likes is now catching up. We have been behind for a period of time, and that's noticeable in some of the areas outside of the impacted areas. So the deployment of resources back into those areas is a key focus at the moment. But I'll take any other questions in regards to that. And got anything to add?
No, just most of all, mate. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mark.
And possibly Max. Matt, councillors, any question regarding roading, recovery? You, Tracy?
Thanks, Chair Kerry. I just wondered, in regards to the heavy vegetation control in the last round of urban spraying, how effective has that spraying been given the wet conditions?
So it is something where the heavy vegetation's been relatively effective, and the contractor for that is on track, if you like, for his program. The spraying is a challenge, to be honest. Wind, rain, more rain is, and that is of most of myself, and particularly around the urban areas. So something we are monitoring quite closely and trying to get on top of. The last spraying round was done 30th of, get my date right, 30th of June. So we're keeping a close eye on the kill rate for that at the moment. So it is a challenge, Metro C at the moment.
Thanks, Matt. Perhaps I'll just flick through the report then. So reading through, that's any comment? Give a comment about auditing some of the sites there. Yes, so I just noted that there was obviously some unlicensed or some unaudited operators. Was there, Matt?
Yeah, so we did a bit of analysis over the last few days. So as we're wrapping up the current financial year, we've actually got over 50 contractors working on the network at the moment, and that comes with its challenges. So but between us and Mark's team, we've ramped up the auditing on those sites, in particular around traffic management compliance. And so one of the sites was shut down. So when you work through your COPTIM ratings, so when you audit a site, you work through various ratings, and that site was rated as dangerous. So that site was shut down immediately and rectified. So essentially there's licensed people on that site operating now. So yeah, not acceptable.
Yeah, was that 50 contractors, Matt? Yeah.
So that's so the 50 contractors are a combination of business as usual and stock and recovery.
Groups of people, isn't it? We move on to Three Waters.
Thanks, Roger.
We've got a new lady, Barbara Stephen. She started.
Yeah, she started. It's great to have Barbara on board. She's come from PNCC and has she was a drinking water assessor with the Ministry of Health previously. So she has already identified some deficiencies in our drinking water systems, and you'll see some more details come through in relation to that. But one of the issues is backflow, which I think people have been aware of, but we really need to start addressing that as a priority. So I'll be bringing that to the elected members in due course.
That has been in our long-term plans for a couple of guys now, Roger, actually, that issue. They had a bit of a price tag to it too, I think.
Regulatory compliance, Roger, anything on this? Oh, sorry, yeah. Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on the Ekirahuna water treatment plant side. So note in the report that there was another fault on the 2nd of July and that work hasn't yet been completed. So two quick questions on this one, if that's okay. Is when are we anticipating that this work will be completed? And secondly, the report speaks to us as a council receiving a full report on what went on. When can we expect that report to come through?
So we've had the contractor here this week. That's been one of the frustrations. Well, that's what I was advised, that the contractor was here this week to do the works that need to be done. And the intent would be to have a report to this committee next month as to exactly what happened, on the basis that we get everything fixed. So I'd like to have everything fixed so we can assure council that what needs to be done has been done before we present that report.
Thanks very much for that, Roger. And I know I sort of bang on about this issue a little bit, but can I just double check that report that'll be coming back through afterwards will be a full report on what caused the failure, but also looking at some of the communication aspects that ran through at the time of the major failure. So I just want to make sure that it will be an in-depth report, not just about the fault and that the fault's being fixed, but any learnings that we can take from that.
Sure, we'll ensure that the report covers, I think, what you would like it to cover.
We also just noted with Pongaroa, we did have a boiled water notice recently. Is that, have we out of the woods on that at this stage? Just for
Yeah, that's been lifted. It was lifted on Monday. We left it on over the weekend because sampling continued, so we needed 3 clear samples before we lifted it. It has highlighted the, I suppose, the situation in Pongaroa with the, is it the Pongaroa Rural Water Society? I hope I've got the correct terminology there. And the relationship and what they are responsible for in turn what TDC is responsible for. So we've identified that we need to have an internal meeting and just be clear on the situation because there's a number of new people, and then we need to meet with the Rural Society. Te Mata Arawai, the regulator, is also very interested after this board notice in this situation and exactly who is responsible for what in terms of ensuring that the drinking water standards are maintained.
Thanks, Roger. So, if we just flick through solid waste, one item. Any comment from Joe there?
Kerry, if we've just got a quick presentation in relation to some of the works that have been completed, would it be all right if Terry does that now? It'll probably just take a couple of minutes. Okay. Oh, I just hand over to Terry.
welcome to the chair, Terry, this afternoon. While since we saw you here.
Okay, so yeah, first time I've been here, so take it easy on me, everybody. So, for those that don't know me, Terry Lamb, so I'm taking on the role as utilities engineer. So I've been in the role for about a year now. So, but working for the Tauranga District Council for close to 5 years. So, so the first slide is, oh, yeah. So yeah, a couple of projects that I picked up as part of the role was one of them was the Pāhia Tour remediation works, which also included the infiltration gallery improvements. Part of that work there's summer last year we installed the manhole in the river itself. You can see that on the left hand side there. So we put that in like I say late last year, just to prove that we could supplement the water treatment plant or the gallery for additional flow. It proved to work successfully. We did find a problem with that is during the low flows or low river levels during summertime. There's a lot of algae was starting to build up around the base of the manhole, and sort of algae will add taste to the water. So we thought, we could look at improving that. So part of our discussion, there was that concern, but there was also a concern in regards to the during floods, the manhole would be exposed to logs and debris washing down and potentially, tipping the manhole over and busting it. So we made the decision, sort of earlier this year, and while we're doing the work on, and the next slide will show us with the weir itself. So we had Tauranga Alliance on site doing some work for us on the weir. So we made a decision then to relocate that manhole into the onto the rivers. Onto the inside of the river rock wall, and to actually lower it. So so that was actually quite a big task. It was excavating a hole. You can see that the photo on the right hand side, the metal area around there. So that was pretty much just a massive hole. It was 4.5 meters deep. Excavated there for probably good part of 5 days. Excavating the hole, big rocks, big boulders, logs, pulling all those out so we could get that structure in there. So we completed that work, put it in, commissioned it, and it's to date is functioning well. So what we're relying on is the water actually permeating through the wall into the chamber. So that manhole's got slots in it, so it's actually filtering through the rock wall into the pump, and that supplements the gallery supply. So yes, it's been in operation for close to a month and a half now. From the feedback from the operations team or the water treatment plant operator, that's functioning well. So the proof will be in the pudding when we come to the low flows again during summer. The next line of photos there is the work that's been undertaken as part of that whole project. So that was the remediation work to the weir itself. So again, working with Tauranga Alliance and also with Y Waste in regards to making sure that we hit all the part of the embankment notice from regional council that we had to lower the weir to a certain height. There was the groins, which is the wire mesh deflectors, you can call them, were all installed. So which was quite a big project to undertake, and it was actually a project that's been dear to a lot of people's hearts, I think, because it's taken quite some time to actually get that job complete. So since that photo was taken, all the groins are finished. So we're just waiting to do some planting with some willow poles behind those the groins themselves. So then we can get that contract that project signed off. So we really is getting the regional council coming back, doing a final inspection, then we can get that embankment notice signed off. Yep, another project which has probably been dear to my heart is the upgrade to the Dannevirke wastewater treatment plant. So we kicked that off early this year with expectations the upgrade will be completed February next year. The photos that you can see there is really the construction of the sludge geobag drying bed. So it was actually removing all the vegetation out of the tephra beds, leveling it out, lining it with PE liner. Since those photos have been taken, there's that whole area has been laid with metal, and what would happen there is eventually is geobag. So it's just a big stocking, which will have sludge that will come from the treatment plant, and so will be dried inside those bags. Job there. So the Eketahuna weir. So we made some changes to that, or say we done some maintenance work to it late last year as well. Pretty hard to spot the difference in the pitches, but I think it's the next slide along. So those pitches there, when we done the work, the water is sort of cascading down the weir itself. You can just see the railway irons there. And there was probably about a 300 or 400 millimeter drop where the water was coming off the toe of the weir. Some concerns were raised by Fish and Game and Regional Council about maintaining a fish passage in that. The next photo should, so you can see the railway irons behind. So you can see the new railway irons in the front, and from the previous photo you can just see the railway irons in the background there. So I was really just trying to maintain a consistent gradient flow for the fish pass, but also making sure we do hold enough water for the gallery itself for the water intake. Yes, finished.
Well done.
I think that's a pretty good photo show for around here today, Terry. There's been a bit of discussion about all those for a while now, so thanks very much for that. Thanks for the slideshow there. Well, bit of good news there, Roger.
Yeah, I think it's great to have some good news and also just to highlight some of the really good work that many of the staff are doing across the council. So yeah, thank you.
Good, thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity.
To solid waste, are we, it's your turn, Joe.
So yeah, just with Ikirahona transfer station, we're looking to move the hours there from 2 to 4 p.m. On a Saturday to back to 9 to 11 a.m., which brings it in line with the Sunday morning hours as well, from the 1st of September. The reason being is that it conflicts with the opening times of Woodville transfer station, which means that our contractor needs to have 2 operators at the same time, which is not really efficient. So we get a bit of a cost saving efficiency out of changing the hours so that they work from Ikirahona and then go up to Woodville after the fact, because that's open 1 till 4. And with that, we also get consistency with no weighbridge at the transfer stations on the southern side. We get consistency with the charging around the cubic meters with the same operator across the 3 sites, Paitoa as well. So yeah, we'll start doing comms around that from here on. So we'll have a good 6 weeks worth of getting comms and having a sign up on the gate, letting people know. We've had massive increase in our curbside recycling, 292% up on the last financial year, and that's been since we've rolled out the curbside bins. So it's massively increased. And when we talk in terms of tonnage, it's 209 tonne up on the previous year. So we've tripled the amount of curbside recycling. Unfortunately, the glass is not so successful, but we are working on with that with comms at the moment to try and bring that up. Yeah, Paitoa transfer station, the gate has unfortunately been broken into again since writing this report. We put cable ties up on the corner to move that netting over that you can see pictured, and he's been back and cut it again. So it's to try and take steel off site. We haven't been able to identify him as yet, but we're narrowing that down. Yeah. Now later this afternoon, we also have Lisa from Eunomia Consulting will be presenting in regards to the WMMP, which we've got coming up later this year. So I'll leave that for her to present this afternoon.
Thanks, Joe. Councillors, any questions around waste management? Me, Tracy?
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just in regards to the police report, you submitted the online. Did you get a response to that? No.
No, I didn't get anything. I actually rang them initially. Once he'd been there a second time, and we realised he was the same person as the first time. But the first time he was there, he hadn't done any damage. He climbed over the fence. So once he'd done damage, I did ring Paitoa Police Station and just made them aware. And they referred me to do an online report. And no, I got nothing. I've heard nothing back from it. It was more of an FYI, because I said at that stage, he's going to come back because he hasn't been caught. So, and he has since been back, unfortunately.
Thanks for that. I'll raise that in a meeting. Okay.
So Peter, then Councillor Scott, thanks.
Yeah. Very, you did mention you put a camera up, or you're putting a camera up.
Yes, our contractor is actually looking to put one up closer to the gate to get a better identifying. Yeah, there is a camera on the kiosk. At the moment, we've only identified him walking across the yard 11:30 on a Sunday night. It's Sunday night that he's in. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask that about the camera as well, so that's great. Just quickly on the Ekirahuna transfer station hours change. First of all, I'm really glad to see some sort of staff rationalisation sort of happening there, or I guess optimization is probably the better word. One thing I'd respectfully ask, I know you mentioned about the communications, but that the comms are really tight around any change. And, you know, I think people will support it as long as they really know about it prior to it happening. So, yeah, just respectfully thought I'd mention that.
I did originally want to go 1st of August, but I thought, yeah, having the 6 weeks comms would be better. Yep.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Mike, just.
For you, Chair. Joe, just a query about, we had a report last week, I think it was, Ekirahuna skate park, I think it was, or ramp, skate ramp, a broken glass around it and discouraging the youngsters from using that facility. Got any knowledge of it?
No, I'm actually not aware of that, but last week I did site audits with my contractor and we stopped at the dock sites there. So, and they were, apart from, there was a couple of bags of illegally dumped rubbish, which we reported. Yeah, it was actually reasonably clean there. There was not even bottle tops and stuff. So I'm not sure when the glass was there. That was Tuesday last week we were there.
Yeah, just further to that, we're not 100% sure it's true that that glass is actually happening, but yeah, just keep an eye on it for us. Thank you.
Well, we do have the contractor sweeping up after each service, so and they're generally servicing over the weekend. So if it's mid to late week, it could be between servicing if there is glass around, but there wasn't when we were on site there. Yeah.
And my thanks to that contractor. I've been there while he's been sweeping up and doing a great job. Thank you.
Mike and Joe, that's great. No further questions. I think that's that report, Roger. I just did want to say, you know, Terry, just to say thanks very much to the team, because that was great work that we saw today, and it's been on around this table for a long time and some of the stuff. So it's very professional and good. It's nice to see it. Team Roger, they get. Oh, sorry. I'm skipping all these. Councillors, we just need a move in a second for that report. So, Mr. Scott and Mike, quick to keep moving. Don't worry about this. So, Councillor Roger marks the Cyclone Gabriel Road and Recovery, and Andrew, welcome.
To you, Chair Kerry. As a bit of an overview in regards to where we are with the recovery works at the moment, there's several major complexities that we're dealing with, and outside of the actual sites and the works themselves. The first that we actually mentioned slightly in our last report in regards to the maintenance, the integration of our current business as usual maintenance. We're currently looking at our renewals programs for the coming year, as well as the amount of emergency works that we've currently got. So bringing those three programs together going forward is going to be a major issue for us in how we actually manage to deliver that from a resourcing perspective, as well as a integration and logistical perspective. So trying to get the efficiencies out of trying to do those works simultaneously, it's going to be a really interesting exercise. So I shouldn't smile, but I actually look forward to being able to see how we can deliver those three sets of work simultaneously the best that we can. The other part too is regards to communications of the works that we're currently doing. We're at a very interesting point, and it was raised in our mayor recovery task force previously, in that how we need to keep everybody informed of what's actually happening, but in a reasonably dynamic environment. Now I'll hand across to Andrew in a minute to actually update us on the rest of the works, but from writing this report now to where we are today, things have actually changed. And I would expect that tomorrow when we get out there, things will change again. Now, being able to keep our residents informed, our stakeholders informed as we go, that's going to be a major difficulty for us. What we may be looking at doing on a Friday when we leave might be quite different to what we actually come in on a Monday. So we're currently looking at with our comms team how we can actually look at different ways of doing that. And we're having some interesting conversations around some of the intergenerational uses of comms, how we can actually keep people informed as we go forward. Obviously, we've got Facebook and the like, but we've also got some of those small community groups. The other major part is, and it's the positivity of having these events, is how we actually keep some of the positive aspects of this, and we easily lose sight of that. And I've mentioned it in the report there in regards to the amount of community connectedness. We've had more conversations with some of our ratepayers, our stakeholders, our farmers over this period of time than we've probably ever had in several years previous. And we really need to try and build on that so that actually stays for the future, so that those communication networks and those relationships are actually enhanced and go beyond this event. So that's my update across all of it. But I'll hand across to Andrew to fill us in on any of the changes in the report and where we're at physically with the works.
Thank you, Mark.
So, first I'll just touch on what Matt Tracy said earlier about the rain side of things and the fatigue, the rain anxiety. That is a real thing. We are starting to feel it. Like every time we've got rain on the weekend, I'm sitting at home thinking, shit, what's happening this week? What's going on now? Where's the slip come down? It is putting a bit of pressure on our team, to be fair, and you can see it within the group. I do probably give credit to the group we've got there. We're pretty resilient. We've been dealing with it for a long time. I mean, these storms started for us in February 22, and we've had 10 since then. So like these rains just keep coming and coming and coming. I think I touched on it in the meeting we had earlier, or last week when we were talking about what was going on. So we're feeling it, but we're feeling good about it as well, which is positive because we've got we are here for the network. We are here to do the right thing for the network, and it's, like I say, it's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. So yeah, just following on from the report, from the initial response phase, as I said previously in the last meeting, we're largely on top of the initial response work, the slips, the drainage issues that we've got. We're down into the more of the cleanup phase of those side of things. Obviously with the rainfall coming through that we've had over the last month in particular, we've had new slips come down and we'll be going back out to places we've been before. This is going to be continuing right through winter, and fingers crossed we do get a drier summer than what we've had this time around because we need a break. From rodent perspective, farmers have a different take on it when I talk to Ray Cannon about droughts and things like that, but yeah. From what I've got in the report, so we have got the request for additional funding lodged with Waka Kotahi. That I understand is being processed through, and we are waiting for the reopening of the TO, which I don't know what the acronym's called.
Transport Investment Online.
Transport Investment Online to get confirmation of this. We are hoping this comes through by the end of this calendar month. Planned recovery. So yes, we are tentatively starting to plan for the fact that we are getting additional funding. So as we've got through the initial response, we're moving into the design engineering work, the bits and pieces that have a bit more complex. So using the priority matrix that we've presented previously, that's setting the agenda for where we're looking. That's for a planning perspective where we're looking at first. It's not necessarily where we're going to build first, from the fact that some sites have more complex engineering design requirements than others. Our focus currently is obviously the roads that are still blocked, the roads that are still closed, and we are working hard to get them open. The next part of the equation is outstanding work from this event, historic events, of which some go back to, I think, September 21 from one. We've got a lot of high complexity work that's sitting out there that is overdue for completion. Obviously with the challenging 16 months we've had, it's been hard to get a bit of progress and traction on them, but a lot of those designs have been getting progressed through these various, I suppose, events we've been managing while we've been dealing with the complexity. So there are a number of sites that are basically ready to go when the weather turns and construction season basically starts in October. we get the winter earthworks period through Horizons, the restrictions taken off for that, and we'll be hoping to be full noise going for that. So very much got the October in focus for the go month. We are obviously persevering through as we go and doing what we can in this weather. But yeah, same response. I see you've got your finger.
I'm just waiting for Chair Kerry to handle
I
it.
think, right, Andrew, to finish, you want to pop in here to give.
Yeah, before he moves on, if you wouldn't mind, Chair Kerry. Thank you, Andrew. Can I just check then, numbers I get excited about? So in paragraph 4.1, we've got the 34 million.
We've launched.
We've lodged the 34 million, and then in paragraph 4.2, you talk about an additional 53 million. So that's $87 million worth.
Wow.
Blimey heck.
Right.
That's a staggering figure for the community to understand.
Got shares in Dow.
Councillor Sharon, one of the major issues with this is obviously, this is not going to be done next year.
Oh, no.
We are looking at, a decade of recovery works.
Yeah.
And that, this is one of the major parts going forward is that, in any of these events, we have that initial response where we're knocking things off road and you see a lot of work take place. One of the great parts I've seen recently, and it was highlighted in the mayoral recovery workshop, the matrix that we're actually using has allowed us to keep progressing our works. So some of the works that we're doing may not have been the highest priority in need, but may have been the easiest to be able to get done without design and without having to do more complex work. So it's being able to try and keep doing some of the, I should say, easier works, but while you're getting some of the design and some of the more complex things done. We will come to a period of time where in this whole supply chain, we will end up with some lags. And that's going to be a difficult period of time because we will have funding to spend and we'll be doing design and there'll be things in the background, very much key to what Roger was saying before with the water side of things. We need to progress with some works while trying to get the design for other works done, and then obviously keep progressing with that funding and development, and being able to keep our resources local, because if we have gaps in work and they go elsewhere, bringing them back can be very difficult. Also, if we are going to be looking at this period of time with this amount of work, developing local, being able to get some of our own people skilled up and being able to do work. And some of the works will be reasonably specialised, especially when you look at some of the cliff faces and some of the geotech work that we're actually needing. And a lot of that work actually has junior engineering. And I was a surveyor once myself and had to run up and down cliffs for the actual surveyor himself. So there are works that some of these people, our locals, we can try and get into. So there is a lot to do in the planning phase. And so this spend is not going to be an instantaneous spend. This is going to be a long progressive spend within the region.
Correct. Perhaps Andrew, I think you might just like to flick over those 4 focus areas before we finish.
Yep. So Marinanga Gorge, as I was writing the report, I was aware that we were nearing completion. The week, I suppose the 3 days after I'd sent it off to be submitted, Blake went out to site and we'd identified a issue further back along the road towards the bridge where another part of the road has slipped out. It hasn't taken out the road as such just yet, but it is very vulnerable. And so for us to open it to traffic as it is very high risk. And with
East of the bridge, sorry, Andrew.
So basically we were the 300 meters we've completed the work is on the eastern side. At the bridge on the western side, as you come along the first part of the gorge, there's a retaining wall. Basically the retaining wall is where we started, and in between that section, there's been essentially the toe of the river's eaten out a bit more and taken a bit out. We are arranging some geotechnical testing to actually confirm what that road is sitting on, because there's a sheer vertical hard rock cliff above it, which we can't dig into. Essentially, probably back in the days, they blasted it to get it down and the road through. So it's a little bit of a tricky one where we don't know where this rock face goes down underneath the road. So we're going to try and determine the depth to see what's sitting on hard ground and what's not. If it's not sitting on hard ground, it's going to be could be quite a complex repair. So we're trying to work out a few sort of scenarios about what could we do temporary to, I suppose, make it safe and reopen it. But it's going to come down to the risk of the whole bank moving off, when I was writing it, it was all pretty positive, feeling good. And then it's like, oh, no, it isn't. So like I say, this is what we're dealing with right now, essentially, is out there. And like I say, summer's coming, fingers crossed. Same again with Rakawatai Bridge. So that was, we had the temporary footbridge in place there. We had the ford in place there that was functioning well. The community behind it, the farmer, was happy. They were getting back and forth. We had the rains come through, I think, was it 2 weeks in June? It was mid-June anyway, when I was up in Taupo. So, and the footbridge got washed out, which was not unexpected given the level of it that we had reinstated it in the river. I mean, I think the storm that came through, we had some river levels recorded in points that were above what came through in Gabriel, which Horizons radar river system's a bit up to a bit of a mess right now. But yeah, we had a significant amount of rain come through the upper Manawatu River, which don't probably normally, when rain comes through the Manawatu, it's generally in the flats, not coming from the headwaters. So that's the difference. Subsequent to that, the footbridge has been reinstated, put back on place. We've now also secured it with a wire rope, which was on order and turned up the day after it got washed out. If we get another rainfall like we have in that mid-June period, there is risk that it disestablishes, but it's basically a case of picking up and putting it back on. So it's been set up to be a temporary footbridge, very much so as it's temporary. And I don't know if many people are aware of the Laws Road Bridge washout. So that has, from what I now understand, has been an ongoing issue since at least 2004. James Kendrick from Ngāti Kahungunu advised me that when he was driving down in a fire engine down there after the 04 floods, that the same hole reoccurred. From what it appears, it's just been topped up and topped up and topped up when it's happened. When it got scoured out in Gabriel, and when we got down and had a look at underneath it, you see in the photo there, the little hole on the under the abutment. Basically, that's the water. As the water comes up, it runs through the abutment, pulls all the fine material out of the aggregate, and just sucks it all out downstream. We've now dug that whole abutment out, wrapped it in geofabric, tightened it up, and put some concrete blocks in front of that hole. There still will be a little bit of remedial works once the water level drops in summer, but essentially that complete abutment has been rebuilt since this photo was taken. So yeah, I suppose it's one of those short-term fixes that get done after a cyclone sometime, or storm event. They keep coming back to you if you don't sort them out and invest in it properly. And it probably comes back to when we're going for this next round of funding. It's that resilience funding that we want to be pushing for. We want to be building a resilient network, not just fixing the immediate issue that you see in front of you, because we'll be back there in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. And if climate change is getting worse, if it's accelerating, then it's going to be we've got to do it, I suppose, now.
Thanks very much, Mark and Andrew. Any further reports? So, yeah, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Andrew, just wanted to acknowledge the fact that you and the team talk about rain anxiety. At that MERS task force, I actually hadn't heard that term before, and it was quite enlightening. I guess if you can name it, you can tame it. And I sat in that meeting and said I didn't know there was a word for that, but it actually described what that was. I just wondered, as part of the recovery, you know, if I'm feeling it and you've got team members out there that are feeling it, whether, you know, Don, through your recovery team, whether you could look into that Red Cross training on rain anxiety and start talking about that so that people are familiar that actually that it is quite normal. That everybody does feel that, whether we could do a bit on that, and even for the teams, you know, here in council, I think that would be good.
Thanks very much for a full report, and thanks to the teams, Andrew, out doing the hard mahi. Yeah.
Council, we'll just, someone like to move the second. The recommendation, councillor Sharon and councillor Scott. Thanks, Matt. All in favour? Right, Mike, we welcome you to the chair. Thanks for your report. In your hands.
Thank you, Chair, Matt Tracy, councillors, ladies and gents. So here to present the capital report. I'll take the largely as read again. The idea for me here though is just to highlight a couple of parts of the main report. So that is to just state again that the financials for this is at May for this one. So that is at the end of May, and that's just based on, again, our timeframes leading up to this meeting and making sure everything's put forward. So as you can see there, those are the spends. I've broken it out again as required and as the projects as well. Further to that, I know that we've got on for capital projects and capital projects overall. You can see again the movements. However, I just wanted to also highlight again that some of these are programs of work, as well as the fact that they also are multi-year. So that is part of this whole portfolio here, and that is with the utility space. So for example, I know that we can have an easy example would be 14 projects, for example, make up just 4 programs of work. So we could look at one of the ones that just went in today, which was the Dannevirke wastewater, which I saw a presentation on. That is a plant design, upgrade, plant sludge press process, as well as facility cell. So you've got 5 of those just for one program of works, and that's over a multi-year period. So sorry if I spoke very quickly there, but here we go. That is how that one looks. And as you can see, there's a few little ones at the end there, but if we can, I'm happy to either take questions on the main report or step through some of these project sheets.
Yes, Councillor Peter, Sharon and me, please.
Chair Kerry. Yeah, thanks, Mike. With regard to those projects that span multiple years, I guess where we get a bit confused is that there might be $6 million of projects that are not going to be completed by the end of the year. It's the dollar terms where it's not the number of projects, it's the dollars that if there's say 14 million to be spent in that period, and we've only spent 6, and there's only a month to go in the year, that's what puts the flags up for us. So these projects that go over multiple years should be, the figures we should see should be the dollars that you expect to spend in this financial year, not over the term of that project. And is that what's happening, or is it the total budgeted figure for that project that's being represented in these figures? Not sure whether I've explained myself thoroughly.
I know, through you, Chair. No, I understand what you're saying. From the report figures here are for the current financial year. And then if you look at some of our project sheets, we do have the overall budget for some of those projects. So the one there I suppose to look at would be Route 52. And we've had a large number in that, and that some of those ones have been put out over multiple years. So then included in the year 3, or in this year 2, sorry, report, this one here shows just the figures from that one financial year and not the entire programs of work. And if you also go back to the annual plan that we've just adopted and the work that we did there as well, is to reforecast and budgeting some of those projects as well over multiple years. So that's again in that part there. But I suppose in addition to that actually as well is that that capital projects prioritisation as well as categorisation portion that we had presented at the last part, we'll be looking at putting that kind of lens as well over the current projects as well as doing it into the LTP part as well. So.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Just a quick question, some of which was answered by your last comment, Mike. If we look, because it is a longer term project, the water supply fluoridation plant one, you know, I always get a little bit concerned when a certain government department says they're committed to funding it, yet we still haven't received any funding from them. What are the risks associated with, no, let me rephrase this. Obviously, with the Ministry of Health being involved the way they are, they're quite comfortable with the fact that this is going to take through till the end of June to actually complete. I mean, when they mandated that, was there a timeline around? Okay, so I can see from Brian nodding that this must meet the specifications they laid out.
So through you, Chair Kerry, yeah, there was timeframes. I don't recall that it was 3-4 years or something like that. I don't know if Roger recalls on what those timeframes are in terms of the agreement when we were provided with that direction for fluoridation. It was a number of years though, in terms of that. Mike might know.
I could always look into getting the exact figures for the dates in there for that requirement. However, the only part there that I would just say is that our project manager on that one in particular has been in contact with them. He's also received a formal letter from them assuring us of those funds, and they are happy with us to proceed into those other parts of the project. So.
I guess going back to my earlier question, 3.3 in your report, Mike, a total of 72 projects and programs are currently being progressed. For the month ended May this year, we have currently spent 10.3 million out of a total of 26.18 million. So it's less than half. We've got 2 months to go.
Yeah, for sure. So some of those ones as well. So we actually do have that whole budget as well for Route 52 sitting in there as a part of that. And then we also have the included parts as well for the Dannevirke compound supply that's also come up. I can go through, if it's going to be better for you, then it would be maybe a case that I put in a list, I suppose, of our high value programs and projects, and perhaps that is a way to sort of portray those figures. However, the other part of that would be that, I mean, as we continue on through this process, it'll be another part of the carry forwards, and that will be also be coming forward to council as we continue on in this as well. So.
I was thinking, but that statement there basically says we've only carried out half or spent half the money we said we were going to spend in the year. That's what they said, but there's no explanation to say.
Oh, no.
So much of that is Route 52, but I don't know.
Well, for example, though, I mean, I suppose that's a part of this thing is that as we've continued to evolve, this report in particular, it always ends up being more detailed in the quarterly report. When we finish off the end of financial year reporting for this one as well, it'd be more detailed into which ones in fundings these actually came from. So some being loan funded, some being from a depreciation reserve, and those ones as well from, say, the pensioner reserve. We've got a major discussion that needs to be put into there, in particular around as well as funding. So some of those ones were funded, and then they can be pushed out over years as well, dependent on the program. So if it can be, it'll be more. And again, and another one on that as well is that while that is the case for some of them also have a lot of their main invoices actually coming into the end of either June. So.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I would tend to agree with what Peter was saying, and I guess one of the reasons for me is I do recall this coming up a few times. So it's sort of, and I feel like it seems to be tripping us up as councillors, the way that it's being written. So thinking of perhaps a slightly different way of displaying it. Where I get caught is what we've spent against a total annual budget. So I'm thinking, oh, well, that's what's been signed off for that year. And then it gets quite confusing hearing that some projects are lumped in there for the total budget. And I totally understand the reason why you've explained of why they are in there, but I think it goes to Peter's point before of us sort of having a figure of what do we realistically expect to spend that year and how close are we towards it. So that gives us more of an ability to be able to monitor how closely we are to the target, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, through your chair again. Yeah, for sure. No, that is absolutely what we're trying to accomplish, especially with the introduction of I know when I first started, we started talking about prioritisation of it, and it's been able to actually be generated now, and it's part of that ongoing process to mature that discipline across it. So while I understand the concerns, it is something that I am working on and reporting through these parts. If there is any other clarity that I need to do for those in particular, I'm happy to adjust the report and continue to adjust the report as required. So I'm happy to relook at some of those figures and the ways that is then also portrayed.
This probably causes ongoing comment for a long time, and then we get to the quarterly reports, and so it's been going for a long time, Mike. So I'm hoping it's like my concern about the rates, Brian, we'll get Brian.
Yeah, totally agree. And we're always wanting to evolve the reports, but acknowledging that also more and more that we put into reports takes more and more officer time as well to generate those reports. In terms of this discussion, we do cover a lot of this off through the Finance Committee around our quarterly reports as well. So I guess it's around the frequency that staff are working in this space. Drop it out of the quarterly report.
I take on board what you say, Brian, and through you, Mr. Chair. If it has been reported in other ways, I think that could be okay, because when I'm looking at this and I can sort of see and looking around, there's sort of the same notes each meeting where it does cause some confusion. And this time I didn't put any notes in because I sort of like, I think I know why that figure is recorded like that. If it's not meaningful for us, instead of creating a whole heap of extra work, perhaps drop it out and keep it in the quarterly. So I'm not sure what other people think, but I don't want the wheel reinvented.
If I don't see it, I won't worry about it.
Exactly.
We might have a win here. This keep going in this direction. Just so I don't create.
So, yeah, no, for you, Chair Kerry, I appreciate that. I think that's a sensible approach to ensure that we're covering that off for a meaningful report when we're talking about those finances, I guess, as a collective, and putting a little bit of information in one report creates a lot of discussion that we would cover off elsewhere as well. So we appreciate that.
So, Mike.
Suggestion.
Fantastic.
Right, councillor, that's my call. So can we have a move in a second for the recommendation, Sharon and councillor? All in favour? Thanks very much, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Let's keep other moving, councillors. Right, councillors, we'll just pop in the number 9. That's the late entry to the field, which was now it was a bridge, wasn't it? The Gibbon Bridge. So we've had the motion to relook at it, but I'll just leave Brian to have a chat about it.
Thank you, Chair Kerry, and I'll probably pass the baton to Mayor Tracy after this, because there's most of the discussion with the owners, or sorry, not the owners, that with the landowners where the bridge is concerned. But just in terms of process, we do have a resolution in place currently. At an operational level, the team has not gone ahead with the demolition while the concerns of the landowners are being addressed, which I think is a valid concern that does need discussion. So the purpose of this late or additional item is really to seek direction from council in terms of what you would like going forward, in terms of, for example, to revoke that resolution and bring forward a recommended one. So therefore, I will hand over to Mayor Tracy, will be able to speak to this a little bit more, but then I'll get some direction, and then that will determine what comes back at the next meeting.
Thanks, Chair Kerry and Brian. At the infrastructure meeting where the decision was made to demolish that swing bridge, I committed to contacting the owners and informing them of that decision, which I did verbally by phone, and then followed that up by sending the paper and discussion document to them. The owners of the property themselves are overseas, so I've been dealing with the son who's managing the farm. But he outlined in an email some of the criticalities of that swing to their operation, and asked if there was any potential to have some discussions around private ownership and what was happening to that. Because we have a motion on the table to proceed with demolishing that bridge, we need something to stop that so that those discussions can take place to further that. So I guess just understanding that what that meant to their business, and there was also one other party involved. So it's if councillors support that, to have that opportunity for them to have that discussion and then carry forward.
I mean, basically just, I think there was also some concerns about the water was attached to that bridge.
Their access to their pumps and their water supply. I can, yeah. Don't. So they use it twice a week, and sometimes more if we have water problems to resolve. The river is often too high to cross by vehicle, with the alternative being to drive around the road, which is an hour and a half round trip from that side of the farm. Our water and power supply is also routed across that bridge. We are very reliant on the bridge for the operation of our farm, and would obviously prefer council to maintain it. However, if you are set to taking it off your books, then private ownership is the next best option. Demolition would be a considerable cost to us and money and time.
But just a quick, sorry, Councillor Scott.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I guess on the face of it, I absolutely support that. I guess where my confusion lies is these were questions that I asked at the time, and these are questions that I asked when we had that paper, because I guess my concern more was that council shouldn't be paying for the bridge, but I was more than happy for it to stay and move into private ownership. And the reason for my confusion is I left that conversation under the belief that that wasn't possible due to the health and safety risk to council. I'm more than happy for us to reconsider it, because I still think it would be the best option, but perhaps Brian might be able to help with some of that.
So, yeah, so there are still risks that do remain. I think what we didn't do in that previous item was explain those probably as clear as what we could have. And one, certainly one acknowledgement was a heck of a lot more consultation should have happened, and we accept that. And in future, that will be a lot better. So I think that's probably the big gap that was missing in terms of the impacts to those owners. Have we really, was council given the opportunity to weigh up all of those pros and cons properly, and probably not. Just for you, Chair Kerry, just maybe it's worthwhile understanding some of the change of ownership process in terms of what some of those risks and timeframes are, so you get a clearer picture before you give me some direction. So I'm just wondering for you, Chair Kerry, if it's okay if Mark comes up and maybe just talks a bit around that process.
Sorry, Mark, you discuss a couple of your comments. No, the whole process, because that's quite difficult, but anyway, brief overview of the great.
Through you, Chair Kerry. Thanks for this one. Obviously, I wasn't here at the point of time. So I'm basically just talking, I guess, hypothetically from prior experience. When dealing with something like this, there are numerous issues, and I'm talking in regards to our in-house lawyer at the moment in regards to how some of that liability may work. Obviously, if we transfer an asset to somebody else, and if we were to sell it and we knew that it had issues with it and had dangerous aspects, in knowing that and selling it to somebody else, if they then had an accident or something happened to them, we need to look at what our liability with that is. I don't know that. That's why we have a lawyer. there are various processes that we can do. Obviously, the road stopping process is a process. I also believe that that road actually goes for some miles as a paper road and then joint links with another road at the back somewhere. And once again, please forgive me. I don't know the district that well yet. It's only been a few weeks. Now, if that is the case, selling a piece of road that goes to the riverside itself, and then keeping the rest of the road that goes through to the other end would seem superfluous. So you would look at getting rid of all of it. If you were to do that, the actual survey and the costs through LINZ would be exorbitant. So that would basically probably be a prohibitor on that part. There would be the option of doing a land swap where we basically take the exact same portion of road from the exact edge of the road going out one road width, and that would go up to the edge of the bridge, which would then still link with the other road on the other side. They would then keep the bridge, but that doesn't resolve the issue of if we give someone a bridge that could be dangerous and they hurt themselves, are we liable? So there are several interdependent factors in doing this, and there are several processes around that. If we were to do a road closure process, and I've been through this a couple of times, the public notification can draw a large amount of external submitters on that and generally require a hearing. The reason behind that, there is some very, very strong advocacy groups in regards to keeping access to rivers. And if we were to not do that, obviously there will be costs in regards to hearings and submissions and the like. And if we went through that process, we still may not even do it because going through a hearing process doesn't mean you get the outcome that you wanted from the first place.
Thanks, mate. I'll just go to Brian, and I'll close this for a reason. I'll tell you in a minute.
So just got to be, we just got to be a little bit careful here now. So we're giving you a little bit of information. We can't get into debate only if it's whether or not you're going to direct me or not. And then we'll go, basically the process would be come back, and what Marcus initially said, will come back into a report providing the various options to what you can and can't do. And then from that point, I'll have open debate about the subject in front of you. So that there'll be a motion here really is whether or not you want to direct the chief executive to provide a report back at the next meeting.
Second. On the favour of that? I know the comments. Scott, I have suggestion. What we've heard today will have to come back to us. We'll have to relitigate this whole thing. Oh, we haven't got chat to you afterwards. Everyone happy with that? Thanks very much for that. Thanks very much, mate. So we can find it for the latest. Right, councillor. So at this point in time, we need to go to public excluded for the next item. Yeah, appreciate it. So if we had a motion to, you agree, we'll just have to do this, this item. So yeah, we'll do that. Then we'll come back and open the meeting. Workshop. That's it. Yeah. Is it still being recorded? Yeah.
The meeting will stop once the resolution to go to public excluded.
So if we get a motion to and a second to go to public excluded. Yeah. Me and Tracy, my mate. And all in favour of that? Aye. Right.